Welcome to Living Vividly, the podcast where health, wellness, and curiosity collide. I'm Jackie, the founder of Vivid Health and Wellness, your guide on this journey to living your happiest and healthiest life.
My co-host Daphne, the unconventional dietitian, is always ready to shake things up and bring a fresh perspective to your wellness journey. And we can't forget Dustin, our producer, who keeps everything running smoothly behind the scenes. Together, we'll chat with health and wellness experts along with everyday people who have inspiring stories and practical insights to share. If you're ready to nourish your body, move better, and discover simple ways to thrive, you're in the right place. And hey, if you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to leave us a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Today, we are joined by Tanya Campbell. She's an occupational therapist and a health coach. I'm really excited to have her on today. We met in January. I think you were doing a talk about health, my favorite topic, and I introduced myself, and now we're here. So we're going to talk about raising kids, raising healthy kids in an unhealthy world. We are all raising kids. And I think we're all in different stages of that. Mine are little and both of y'all's are teenagers.
We are not all raising kids.
Okay, well, Dustin's raising his dogs.
That's right.
But you are making homemade food for your dog now. So we're all very conscious about what we're putting into our kids' bodies. And we're just going to get into that. Tell us a little bit about your health journey. Like, what got you on this path?
Okay.
Have you always been super health conscious?
Yeah, how long have you been doing this too?
Okay.
Like how old were your kids when you got started?
So my journey did not start with like the girl who just wants to be healthy. I was the opposite of that. So I did grow up in a small town, and my grandfather had a huge garden behind us. So my mom was I was always exposed to like fresh vegetables and fruits and things like that. And she did cook relatively healthy. And so, but when I went to college and beyond that, I became a complete sugar addict. I love sugar, all things sugar. I'm going to back up and say that I was like the allergy kid growing up, allergy shots, sinus infections, allergic to pet dander and a lot of foods and things like that. So when I just went bananas with my diet and all the sugar, that got worse. I would have horrible sinus infections. And then I ended up with systemic candida in my, I would say, early 30s. And so my journey was not born out of, I think I want to go to school to be a nutritionist or a dietitian. Mine was born out of, oh my gosh, like not only my health, but because of the issues I was having, I then passed some things on to my children who were C-section babies who did not get the proper gut flora that a baby who travels through the birth canal will get. So, had no idea about all of this, right? A lot of illness, a lot of chronic infections, and just one after the other. And so I also it's important to say that I was pre-diabetic in my 20s because I ate nothing but sugar. And not just sugar like you would think of, like cane sugar, high fructose corn syrup, but, rice, bread, pasta, everything that turned to sugar, pizza. I craved these things all the time. But I didn't care. I weighed 100 pounds soaking wet. I weighed 100 pounds whether I ate grass or Burger King, so I ate the Burger King, right? Did not care. And then I had children. And not my first one, my oldest wasn't necessarily like, didn't stand out like, he has health issues. He seemed perfectly fine. Although I was in the medical field, I never really liked medicine. And so I was very careful about those kind of things and started feeding him organic baby food because I just thought, why not? Must be better if it's organic, but knew nothing about it. Knew nothing about, the organic industry or why we should, choose cleaner food. And then I had my second one, and it was a back-to-back pregnancy, basically. And this beautiful little boy was a breastfed baby. When he did eat, it was, it was organic, and he was sick. He had asthma. He had chronic respiratory issues. He had eczema all over his body. It was terrible. And so my journey was born out of desperation to fix him because the only option that I was given was steroids, like a life of steroids. And again, I don't like medicine unless it's a last case scenario, which thank goodness we have it for that. Right. But, and so that is where, when he was a baby, my real journey began, and I dug deep and started learning about how our food is raised and the chemicals that are put on them and GMOs and dyes and these things. And this was I would say the journey itself started about 18 years ago, close to 20, 18 years ago. And then I got really, really deep about 17 and a half years ago. Very difficult to find the information. I know you know what I'm talking about, right? Our journey started somewhere around the time with the more natural type of living. But it was a very difficult journey. You didn't have Whole Foods. You didn't have natural grocers. I had to travel once a week to Baton Rouge to get my sprouted this or my organic that, right? Thank goodness for a drug emporium. They had a few things, but you didn't have the aisles of like open a bag and here's your organic snack. I was dehydrating, soaking, making kombucha, all the things, right? Making my own yogurt, all of these, because it just wasn't available. So
we used to have a joke in my house. Well, I didn't come up with the joke. My sister did, that she would open the refrigerator and she's like, don't touch anything that's in a jar that's not labeled because you have no idea
what's
it's
in it.
Be.
That's
I'm
so
like,
true.
oh, I know what everything is. She's like, I don't know what it is and I don't know if I want to eat it. So I'm not going to open anything that's in a jar and not labeled.
Yes.
Because that was what my refrigerator
Daphne's
was full
science
of.
experience.
Yes. And you know, it's this feels sort of full circle because I can remember when I started this. I mean, people would think you're crazy, you know, because you didn't want your child to have seed oils or high fructose corn syrup or dyes, you know, and I remember hearing just a couple of names. One was Miss Roseanne, you know, because I was able to actually go and buy kombucha from her, which was like the greatest thing ever. And then your name came up, and then who we were just talking about,
Jackie Cosper,
Jackie, yeah. And I actually went to see her early on with my youngest. And anyway, it didn't happen overnight. It had to be very, very extreme because the eczema in particular, he would have one bite of sugar. It was almost like it was an allergy to sugar. If he had any sugar at all or certain chemicals, the eczema would just inflame. And then guess who's up all night scratching those little legs? He's up crying all night. I'm up exhausted, right, with these two little bitty boys. And it was just so hard to watch him so miserable. He would wear flannel long pajama pants, you know, in August outside because I did not know. I was like, why does he always want to wear these pants to play outside? Because it would hide his legs so people wouldn't say, oh, what's wrong with his legs? And so it was a really, you know, sad situation for him. At first, he had this cold weather induced asthma. If he got any respiratory issues, it would typically turn into asthma, which, you know, wake up in the morning with that bark and then the next thing you can't breathe. I'm up oiling him all night and, you know, teas and herbs and all the things. But it was a curse and it was a blessing at the same time because it was a very difficult journey back then. But it led to just phenomenal health, reversing of all of these conditions, beautiful skin, healthy boys, you know, who had fantastic eating habits. And you put something in front of them, they just ate it, right? Because it started when they were basically babies. They didn't know anything different.
Similar beginning for me too. I liked health stuff, but once I had kids and they had health issues, it was just desperation, like you said. Just GI issues. My youngest she had a suppressed immune system. It's better now. But yeah, just constantly dealing with sick babies.
Yeah.
What am I doing? Yeah.
You know, I didn't say this, but I think it's important to say that I did explain I was pre-diabetic. I was the allergy kid. Multiple times a year, I would have very intense sinus infections. They just came. You just think that's normal, right? I can't even tell you the last time I've had any illness of any kind. I'm not even sure I ever had COVID. If I did, I can remember having like this bad headache but like no other symptoms.
That's just
People
from eating.
Just from, you know, nearing 2 decades of being very intentional, very clear in my goals for my health and sticking to that, you know, and some people would call it radical. Well, I'll take radical all day long if I don't get sick, right? It's a wonderful thing to just feel good all the time. Energy and all the things.
I would say it is a wonderful thing to just feel good all the time.
Yes, and I really do. At 56, I feel worlds better beyond anything I felt in my 20s and 30s. So that's
not a lot of people can say that.
Yeah, I'll say that as a dietitian, when someone says, like whenever I introduce myself as a dietitian, the first thing that I think comes to people's mind is weight. And, you know, that I'm a weight loss coach, I'm a weight loss specialist, whatever, but it's always related to weight. And I think that's because for a variety of reasons. And I'll tell my patients that I work with, I really don't care how much you weigh. I mean, if it doesn't, your weight doesn't, it matters way more to you than it does to me.
Yes.
But my goal as a dietitian is to help you to feel your best, to be the best version of yourself. Yes. And if that means you lose weight, that's great. Yes. But I'm not judging our progress based on your weight loss.
Yes.
And that's a big myth, I feel like, that I'm constantly dispelling, that as a dietitian, weight is attached to that, but that is not the way that I measure success. If you can wake up every day and feel like you're ready to conquer the day and that you're ready to contribute to our society and to our community, that's where I feel like we're doing a good job.
Yes. And you know, it's a rare bird where, especially with women, that's not their main goal for changing their diet.
For sure.
I've had only a few clients that were like, I don't care about my weight, but it's amazing because those are the ones that stick with it more because they're not worried the scale's not moving, and they're just cleaning up and cleaning up. And the end result, to me, I mean, the weight loss is like a side effect, right?
I've had people come in and they're like, I haven't pooped in 5 days, but the most important thing to me is to lose weight.
Right.
I'm like, okay, well, we're going to approach this totally differently from the way you think we're going to approach this.
Right.
I
yes, totally agree.
That is, you're coming from a place of loving your body or hating your body. So whenever you hate your body, you want to lose weight and you're not worried about its functioning per se. But whenever you're eating healthy and exercising because you love your body and you want to improve it, it's a totally different mindset. Yeah. So what did you do to change whenever all that started happening? What did you start eliminating?
Again, I call it a blessing and a curse. A curse because it was, you know, you looked half crazy throwing stuff out of your cabinet, you know, but a blessing because I would not have preferred to learn about it now in this environment because I think it was so much more overwhelming because there's so much information now and there's people like me and like you that a person might look at and go, I need to be there tomorrow, right? No, I mean, I had nobody. There was nobody that I knew. Nobody was doing this. And so it was literally one step at a time. Like I learned about, I think one of the first things I learned about was genetically modified food. And so I went in my cabinet and I cleared out I think I had 2 things left in my pantry after that, but that's where it started. And then I would learn about high fructose corn syrup, let's say, or I learned about conventional dairy. Now, with that being said, as I was learning, I always say it was like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I'd always find out, that wasn't necessarily the right thing, right? But it was always moving forward to where I am now with it. But it was just it was one bite at a time. Like they say, you know, how do you eat an elephant? One little bite at a time. And I think that's why I was able to be successful with it and sustain it because it was not this radical, everything's thrown out, everything's got to be organic. You know, probably organic was one of the very first things. And that was difficult living here at the time. But, you know, dyes would come in at that point and then this or that. But it took me here, which is a very, you know, easy lifestyle to live now. And it's solidified. It is just what I do. It's no longer, it's just what I do.
Yeah, you form those habits slowly.
Yes.
We talk about that all the time. Daphne says inch by inch,
inch by inch. Yes. And that was my journey.
The whole purpose, and I think I've said this now 5 times, the whole purpose of this is to help people realize that it's totally unsustainable to try to do it all at once.
Yes, it's too much.
Just one little thing at a time will definitely help people sustain those changes.
Yes.
And also just having the community of people around them that are on similar paths.
Yes. And that's a lot since COVID. You know, COVID brought a lot of this to the forefront. But and it's so funny because the people who the naysayers are now posting things on social media. Like I think I told you that like 17 years ago. You know, it's so funny. But it's great because it's no longer this weird thing to do and like, you know, you're shunned or you're, you know, mocked. it's now the cool thing.
I moved here. My son was almost 2 years old when I moved back from New Orleans, and my other friend Jackie, she earned the name Wacky Jackie. That's what we called her in my house.
Yes.
And she lovingly knew this.
Yes.
But she would come at me with these things, and I'm like, whoa, slow down. And it took just a very short period of time before we became like inseparable.
Yes.
It was always the two of us, because we could talk about things that no one else was talking about, and we could have the conversations, and we could try things. And like our kids grew up together, and so she would come to our house. Basically, the kids would come and play. We would make a bunch of stuff. So whether we were fermenting something or we were trialing some kind of new flour or making a big batch of broth, I mean, whatever it was, we were doing something. The kids were playing, and then we'd like, hey, check this out. See what you think about this, and not try and make it a big deal with them. But we were always together. And even whenever we would go to social events, we would find ourselves sitting in the corner talking about whatever new food, whatever new oil, whatever new supplement, like that was our conversation. Yeah. So she was my community. It was two of us, and that was it. And then Rosanna would come in there, like she didn't have kids at the time, or young kids. So we would take our kids to Rosanna's, and but that was our community. It was very, very, very small.
Very small.
But without them, I couldn't have done anything. I couldn't have moved in any kind of direction that we were moving at the time. And so now I think that our community is a little bit bigger.
Oh, yes.
Which, again, blessing and a curse. But because I knew that if I had a question, I would call Jackie. Like, hey, let's talk about this. You do the research. Let me know what you think. I mean, but it was constantly between the two of us. And now there are so many people that you can reach out to that it almost can feel overwhelming. Even being well-versed in all of it, it can feel a little bit overwhelming.
Absolutely. I was very blessed to have kind of the same situation. There was a lady that I met at the farmer's market, which I used to say my life revolves around the Saturday morning farmer's market, because I got to be there early and get all the good stuff. But I met her, and she ended up being someone that I called my Lafayette mom. And she was very, and I say intense, and that's not a bad word, thank goodness she was, because she really helped keep me motivated, and she supported me so much when I really, really needed it. She would help me research. Now all the talk is gut health, right? Well, the things that Daphne and I are talking about, like the kombucha, the broth, all the things, that's your key to gut health. And this is what we were doing nearly 2 decades ago. And the thing that I saw bring about the most healing with my youngest, I did GAPS when they were like 2 and 3, before GAPS was hardly known about. I did GAPS for 2 solid years, like you're supposed to.
What's GAPS?
GAPS is gut and psychology diet, the gut-brain connection. But it's it can be very overwhelming and intense. It's a heavy bone broth. I hate to call it a diet. It's just, the way you eat during that time. But I mean, miracles happened in my house on that diet. And now everybody's talking about, probiotics and kefir and, yogurt and kombucha and all the things. Because you improve your gut, you improve your health.
Yeah.
So it was a blessing to know that back then. But boy, when we were experimenting in our kitchens, it just looked awfully weird to people, know. And now you go to the store. Yes, now you go to Drug Emporium or you go to Natural Grocers and you just buy it off the shelf. It's just not a weird thing anymore. So that's a really good thing.
Yeah, but even now, I think, it obviously in our community, we're talking about it more and it's more normalized. But I have 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they're still outliers in the way that they eat. They don't have food dyes.
Yep.
We don't have gluten. There's certain things that we just don't have in our house, and everyone else does. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's as much bullying, because whenever I was a kid, if you ate like that, people kind of made fun of you. And I don't think there's that so much anymore, but just the wanting to fit in and just be part of the normal crowd is still hard for kids.
Very. Very.
So that's a lot of isolation. Yeah. I can remember my son went to a homeschooling school. So I didn't homeschool him, did not have the patience for that. But he went to a school where it was like a homeschooling group. And one of the kids brought a Lunchable, and my son was the one bullying the Lunchable kid. I was like, okay, we can't, let's tame this down a little bit. We can't do that. There's a tact to this. So we're going to do it. Now I feel like in my house, tables have turned a little bit. I kind of went from being I lost steam, essentially, is what happened. My son got a little bit older. When he got into the 7th grade is whenever he was like, okay, I really don't want to bring lunches to school anymore. I don't want to carry a lunchbox, is what he told me.
Yeah.
Which I interpreted as I don't want to be the one that's being left out. And so I was fine with it. Okay, well, you can not, I had to take a step off the pedal a little bit because it would have created too much tension. It was starting to create tension. So I feel like we haven't gone full circle. I mean, he hasn't gone into eating a lot of the things that he does sometimes eat things. And I'm like, oh God, okay. But what we started with whenever he was younger, even younger, probably around 5 years old, is that we started talking about poop. Mm-hmm. We've had this conversation before that we had in my dining room, a picture of the policeman poop that came from Dr. Paul Chek. And so we actually did talk about it at the dining room table, which I don't necessarily recommend. Like, that's not necessarily needed. But whenever he would eat something, go to a party, so he didn't have any health concerns. So if he would go to a party and eat a cupcake that had blue icing, we talked about it. I wasn't anti, like, you can't do that, but we would talk about, okay, so after he would use the bathroom, what did your poop look like? Yeah. And so he got used to looking at it and describing it to me. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to go check it out, but just tell me what it looked like. So we had that conversation. And so that's still, as a 17-year-old, a conversation that we have. So when things aren't going well in the bathroom, then we need to really kind of look at what's happening whenever you're eating. And so we still talk about that, the topic of poop. So oddly enough, one of my patients that I saw yesterday, who I saw like 3 years ago, she was like, oh yeah, I remember you told me you were the shit talker. I'm like, that still goes. Yes, I am the shit talker, and we'll talk about it literally anytime that you want to. I am totally unfazed by it.
Normalizing talking about poop, and also just reflecting. Okay, I'm feeling anxious today. I'm a little bit down today. What have I eaten in the last few days? And just having those conversations as kids definitely makes them more conscious about how what we eat affects us.
Right.
For a while. It's like 72 hours, I think, is whenever you start feeling
it can be that
benefits or opposite.
So I had my journey's been similar to Daphne's with my kids. They're about your kids' age of 17 and 18. And, at the beginning, they just ate whatever you put in front of them. But at some point, and I did homeschool, still homeschooling. My youngest will be a senior next year. So I did have them sitting at my table for lunch more than, and so it was a little bit easier than packing those lunches every day. And they weren't looking at anybody else's plate at the same time. So that was good. And we also have a broken home situation where there were two totally different mentalities about health and diet. So there was exposure to, what I would call extreme on one side, and then there's the other extreme on the other side, right? And so they had to find their way with that, and disappointingly so in some areas, because the end result of when you're putting certain things into your body. But what I know to be true is that they know, and they know it, and at any point where they need to pull from that knowledge, they have it, and they already know they like the food. So I think that, starting them off young, regardless of what they do with it in the meantime, because the meantime, any moms listening to this and trying to make decisions, the meantime is tough. But it's not just with their diet, right? I mean, what teenager is doing exactly what we teach them in all areas? Right. Their diet's just another area where they're trying to find their own way, right? Be their own person. It's a natural part of growing up. But that knowledge, and it's biblical, train them up in the way they should go. When they're older, they won't depart from it. And that's my prayer and my hope, is that when they are older and they're not, all a 17, 18-year-old brain can see is right here, right? That's scientific. Right. They see right here. They can't see down here. But when they can start seeing down there and they realize what I'm putting in my mouth now, that's going to affect over here. Right now, it's just, what do I want? Right. My hope and my prayer is that, they go back and start making those choices again. And I can see it already, where they may not be following it like I'd like them to. But if somebody they know or care about is sick, or, they'll come to me.
Yeah.
Can you fix them? Or something like that. And so they know they just want what they want right now. And it's like all the other areas of a teenager's life. Sometimes it's just hard to watch.
Yeah.
It's easy to kind of control what your kids are doing up to a certain point.
Oh,
but
yes.
It's also developmentally normal to push back and to go against. So I think a lot of people that I've spoken to about this, especially moms, it's like the 10 to 15-year-old, that's when it really starts to get difficult. And like, how much do I try to control them? Like, am I causing more problems by being overly controlling?
So there's a dietitian. She's not local. Her name is Ellen Satter. And she's probably retired now because I've been studying her for a long time. But her philosophy with children is that your job as a parent is to give them a choice. And their job as a child is to decide if they're going to accept that choice or not. So I give you a choice of, do you want A or do you want B? And then they decide, I want A or B or none. And that's fine. And so, but your job and your role is to give them choice and let them decide how they're going to use that choice. And I think that as we move on past, like into the teenage years, preteen, teenage years, our job at home still is to give them that choice and to let them decide how they want to do it. And their job is usually at that time going to be not to choose what you would want them to choose, but we still have to provide that foundation for them. Like, that's our role as a parent, is to provide the foundation. I had a conversation with my son not too long ago where all of his friends were at our house, and some kind of way, one of the friends said that they don't eat vegetables. They don't eat anything green. And they kind of poked at him a little bit, and the conversation moved on. And then later my son brought it to me. He was like, can you believe that he does not eat any vegetables? And I was like, yeah, I kind of can believe it. I'm sorry for him.
Right.
But I can believe it. He's not the only child. I grew up not eating vegetables because my mom didn't eat vegetables. So anyway, and I said, what do you think about it? How do you feel? And he was like, I'm kind of glad that I do.
Yeah.
And so it was just, that was a little check mark. Yes, mom did something right along the way. You know, even all the bullying that I've done to him up until that point, I feel like, yes, I've done something right. And I do believe that it's a full circle moment, that they're going to come back to a point where I see it with people all the time, that we kind of revert back to what our eating habits were in childhood. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'm trying to undo that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we're trying to get back to that. But that's kind of the natural path, I think, is that you start being taught and then they veer off and then they come back to the path of what they were taught because that's what they know.
Right.
And I think that is scientifically proven to some extent. So fingers are crossed that's where we're off the path now with him, but he's coming back. And, that's just kind of a journey that we as a family have to work on together.
Do you as a dietitian ever feel, I'm sure not now, but did you ever feel like, oh, I'm failing because I'm a dietitian and my kid is not eating healthy?
Gosh, all the time. All the time. Even now, yes. Yeah. I question things now all the time. But I have to keep reminding myself that we planted the seed and the seed will grow on its own time. You know, I can't watch it constantly to try and force it to grow. It's going to grow and it's going to flourish whenever it's ready. And so that's a constant reminder for myself. As I told y'all last night, my son told me that he was going to Popeyes and I almost fell on the floor, but I didn't.
Right.
And it turns out he didn't go to Popeyes to get something to eat. So, but I mean, those things happen because he's with his friends, and that's where they go. And that's not the first time we've had a conversation about Popeyes. And then, whenever it came back around, I was like, so how'd you do? He's like, not so good. All right. Well, you just remember that next time everybody wants to go there.
Yeah. And I remind myself all the time, like when I was a teenager, were we wanting to do everything like our parents know? And did I not love my mom or dad because of it? Did I not respect them because of it? No, we just wanted what we just want what we want. Right.
Yeah.
And, piggybacking where you said, give them choices. You can be very intentional about those choices you're giving them too. Like it doesn't have to be, organic sprouted oatmeal or, donuts from the donut shop. Right. And so you can have two healthy choices that they get to pick and think they're having something great, right? And they don't have to have that. And I do think, over the years, watching the way that I did things, watching how other moms did things, for those of the few of us who were doing it way back then, I was very intense with it because it was a medical. There were physical symptoms that would emerge that we had to deal with if you put like even just a little bit of this or that in his mouth. Another friend of mine, it was behavior. If there was any dye that went in or any gluten, it was behavior. I've seen moms who have said, I don't want to be so extreme that they're going to run from it. I was more of that, very intentional, wanting everything just so that he could heal, right, and get better. But the end result that I see now, 18 years later, is it's all the same.
Yeah.
Every one of these teenagers that I know of whose moms started way back when, they're all doing the same exact thing. Right. And so it's just, so pick your own path. Don't feel condemned because you do it one way or the other, because no matter what we do, typically those teenagers are going to just be trying to find their own way with it. Just because they're doing that doesn't mean that it's failure, and doesn't mean that it was for nothing, because like I said earlier, like the knowledge is there. And when they come full circle, when they want to feel better, when they want to be healthy, when they have children, our grandchildren, right, will probably be raised pretty good in the kitchen because they know, and they'll want that for their children, I believe.
I think that's going to be really good for people to hear, because we're all trying to do the best we can for our kids, and we all just have to, we're also bio-individual, like everyone, like my daughter has celiac, so I'm an absolute psychopath when it comes to gluten. The dyes, we don't do dyes, but my youngest, if she goes to a birthday party and there's a red cupcake, we'll have a conversation. Like, what's going to happen if you eat that dye? I'm going to get grouchy. Okay. Do you want the cupcake? No. So, but if she wants it also, okay, we'll deal with it. But some things I'm crazy about, and some things I'm more loose about.
Right.
And I still think I'm doing okay.
You are.
My kids are at least conscious about what they're putting in their body. And I think that's the main thing, is just to teach them age appropriate nutrition information.
Right. And it's a fact. And this is what I had to keep telling myself as I watched my kids veer off. And just, it's heartbreaking because right? What's, that was not good for you. But what I tell myself is what I know to be true, that it doesn't matter if you were raised when we were growing up or 100 years ago or in this generation, those formative years when you first start being fed, when your body is being nourished in those first years of life, that has like a lasting impact into your adulthood. It forms the health of your future. So all the efforts that we make, regardless of what they do as teenagers, it's not for naught, right? There's a purpose behind it, and it will benefit them even when they're not helping themselves.
Yeah. And I'd say parenting is hard.
Oh gosh,
parenting is so hard from the food aspect, but literally every aspect of parenting is hard. So it's really, I think, an important thing to take away, that there's not one way to do this wellness journey with your children. There's an infinite number of ways to do it.
Yes.
And so I think the most important thing is being aware of being intentional about whatever your intention is. So whether it's gluten elimination or sugar, like decreasing sugar consumption, or whatever the journey is, the dyes are kind of the hot subject right now. Whatever your journey is, being intentional about understanding it yourself and relaying that information to your child. So you're not just restricting them for the sake of being the mean mom.
Right.
There's a reason that you're doing it, and helping them understand and helping them navigate that age appropriately. I think that's the path that we need to focus on.
Yes.
It's not going to be perfect. There's zero part of this that's going to be perfect.
Right.
In fact, we make about 500 food decisions in a day.
Yes.
So the idea of them all being perfect is really not even, that's not the goal, because you'll fail at that every single time.
Yes.
So if you are just knowing what your intention is and relaying that intention, and you'll fumble it up for sure. That's just part of the process.
Right.
But relaying that intention and continuing down that path, I think, is really kind of where the magic is.
Right.
It's interesting to see them do it on their own too, because like we tell them all this stuff and then I watch them make bad decisions too sometimes, but good decisions on their own. And that's very rewarding because my kids just know I'm going to eat my vegetables first and then my protein and then my rice, and just those little things that they're not life-changing or mind-blowing, but I know that they're hearing at least what I'm saying.
My 18-year-old just wrapped up his freshman year at Palm Beach Atlantic in West Palm Beach, Florida. So like he's so far away from me, I can't even drive healthy food to him, right? I could, but it would take me the whole day. When I dropped him off, I was, of course, scanning the cafeteria and looking at what he was going to be eating all day long, every day, and just, have to release it and hope he does the best. And then at some point early in the second semester this past spring, he mentioned to me that he was going to listen to nothing but Christian music for 30 days. He was only going to eat meat and vegetables for 30 days. He was going to sleep more. He was starting, working. He's big into working out, but, going to keep doing that. And I thought, oh my goodness, like, even though he's not doing it the way that I would like him to necessarily with his diet, it's in there. It's in there. It's in there, and, even when I say the Christian music, that's, really all we listened to when they were growing up. And of course that changes over time, but just like so many bad food choices, there's so much, it's just worse than when we were growing up, right? And to see them, though, learn how to make their own choices, because not only a healthier body with the food choices, but, a healthier soul, a healthier mind, they're listening. Yeah. Even when it doesn't look like they are. Right. They hear it. They heard us, and they still hear us, even though they may not want to hear us at this moment, at this juncture in their life. They listen. They heard it.
I agree.
Also, even if you don't grow up, I think the kids that aren't growing up in healthy, like obsessive homes like we are, everyone is still going to get to a certain point. Like I didn't grow up in a home that was super health conscious. We ate a lot of sugar and a lot of processed food. I was a latchkey kid and I made microwave mac and cheese every single day, and it wreaked havoc on my health. But we all eventually get there.
I had butter Pop-Tarts every morning.
Butter Pop-Tarts?
Buttered Pop-Tart. You toast them and throw some butter on there. Delicious.
I would melt the butter. I think we talked about this. I would melt the butter and dip my Pop-Tart in
Yes, you did it like the opposite way I did it. Yeah.
I never heard of that.
And I always loved when my dad would butter the Pop-Tart because he would butter both sides of the Pop-Tart.
Yeah, I grew up eating frozen pizza.
Well, and I say butter.
Burritos.
We talked about this the other day too.
Right, it was.
I can't believe it's not butter.
Yeah,
the gallon of oil, really.
Yeah, and this leads into like what I usually tell my clients. I feel like it's probably very similar to what you say to yours, but I just tell them, and as much as I want them all eating organic as much as possible, avoiding seed oils, avoiding sugar, all the things. What I say is, eat real food. Yeah. Just teach your children how to eat real food. Like it's not realistic to never open a package. We just have too much convenience, right? It's not going to happen 100% of the time, but just eat real food. Learn to love apples and oranges and bananas and grapes and strawberries and real food, broccoli and carrots. And
how do you handle the moments when they don't? Like when they're like, despite everything you taught them.
You mean later on?
Yeah.
So I thought you meant early on, like when you're teaching them this, because mine just ate it because they were babies. This is all they knew, right? So it was a really beautiful thing for me, that phase of the journey. Oh, handling it when they don't. I still get to see my kids because they like, if I cut up a bunch of carrot sticks and put them in a container, like my son will sit down, the whole container will be gone. He'll still make a lot of good choices because if he wants to eat at my house, it's typically, it may not be exactly what I'd like, but it's still, in comparison to most homes, it's going to be a really healthy option, right? But knowing when he's not, like, the Popeyes, Cane's, Popeyes I don't hear much, but Cane's I do, and Blaze Pizza, and I will not lie, it pulls on a mama's heart when she knows better. You just have to learn how to, like in all things, let it go a little bit, because we can worry ourselves to death. In the end, they're going to do what they're going to do. There are areas that I am going to be on my knees, on my face, praying harder than other areas. But with food, it is a prayer. and I hope that they come back full circle, really big and teach their children the same way.
Well, and I think that it starts with what you have in your home.
Yes.
So if what you have in your home is what you want, the food that you want to provide for your children, for yourself, for your family, that's kind of where it starts.
Yes.
So if that's most of us, not everyone, but most of us are eating in our home or from our home much more than eating outside of the home.
Yes.
And so I think that's even when things start to go awry.
Yes.
Having the foods in the house that are the things that you want to provide for yourself and your family and your children, that's where it starts. And so you let go of all that other nonsense. It's out there. There's no way, there are ways to avoid it, but there's no way to not ever see that stuff.
Right.
But you kind of go back to the foundation that you have in your home, and that's what you have. And there aren't other options within the home.
Most of your meals are healthy. I think it's like 80% of our food, or what we eat in America, about 80% of it is processed food now.
Yeah.
Yes.
If we could just reverse that number,
Right.
like you can still have 20% processed food, but just 80% of your diet be whole, just real food.
Eat real food. That's my motto. Eat real food. And even if it's, like I said, I'd love it to be grass-fed, if possible, organic, grass-fed beef, organic pasture-raised chicken, organic vegetables, organic fruits. But even if you're not able financially to do that with everything, look at the Dirty Dozen and make your choices with your budget. But even if you're not able to even buy the meats, organic, pasture raised, grass fed, all the things, eating real food and eliminating all that processed food will do wonders for your health.
Yeah. What do you say? 1% every day. Just try to
improve by 1%.
Yeah, just little steps.
Little
it doesn't have
changes
to be
every day.
drastic all the way.
And also, as we talked about last week with the food bill, the food industry is catching on. Things are very different now where you can get processed food that's not ultra processed.
Yes.
So you can get let's say like a chicken patty that really is just chicken, maybe a little vegetables in there, even some like mango or fruit or something. We can get those convenient things now. Not everything, but there are things out there. And as we level up as a consumer, as a purchaser, to what we want, the food industry will comply.
Right.
It's going to take some time, but they're either going to lose money or go out of business, or they're going to change the way they do food.
Right.
And so, we're seeing that
some of that
over the past
now. Yes.
10 or 15 years, they're changing the way they do food.
Yes. The grocery store aisles look a lot different than when you and I started this out, and there was, there was virtually nothing. There's rows and rows of gluten-free and organic sprouted this, and
right.
So yes,
like
I agree.
10 years ago, gluten-free food was cardboard basically, and now we
so
can
I credit
get
the paleo
all
movement for that. The paleo movement is really what moved gluten-free or gluten, the acknowledgement and awareness of what gluten is,
and grains in general.
That really made a big difference.
Yes.
I'm glad my daughter got diagnosed with celiac now versus my aunt who had to stop eating gluten 20 years ago. She had a hard time eating.
Yes.
I still let my kid have a cookie every once in a while, or we make pancakes on Saturday morning, and I'm very glad that I'm able to do that in a safe way.
Do y'all have pancake Saturdays? We did that for a long time too.
And bacon, which I know is terrible, but my family, I don't eat it, but my family loves bacon. So bacon and pancakes.
Pancake Saturdays. We did that for years and years.
How did y'all cook the bacon?
I bake it.
Fry it.
My mom used to microwave it.
Oh yeah,
Oh gosh!
I got toasted Pop-Tarts and microwave.
There was some Instagram late Babs, I think she's a famous Instagram grandma. In a couple Instagram. I found this trick. She puts it on a sheet pan, cold. You turn on your oven right when you put your bacon in, and you let it cook for 15-20 minutes, and it's perfect. And you don't get the oil all over your kitchen.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a rare.
And you could do a lot more.
It's a rare day that we have bacon in my house. But, now you just run to natural grocers or Whole Foods, and you can get organic, pasture-raised pork, bacon, and couldn't have done that before.
No.
I had a farmer raise the bacon that we had when my kids were little. My farmer was raising the heritage pigs, eating root vegetables, and that was the only bacon that we could safely give. So it
still probably a lot more healthy than what we're getting in the grocery store.
Probably, yes, more than likely so. But so much more access to some of these like fun things that maybe, we had bacon on Sunday mornings or something like that,
Because I'm trying to let my kids have a childhood too and have these memories that are, I grew up in the kitchen with my grandmother, and most of the food that we ate was certainly not healthy, but it was made with love, and we had a very kitchen-centered family. And I still want my kids to have that, so, and enjoying the food that we eat too. It's not just chopped up cucumbers every single day, which they do have that every single day, but I still want them to love the memories that we have in the kitchen.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not always a source of a fight. And I'm sure that's coming though.
One of the things that I would like to see where I feel like things haven't transitioned as much is when kids are in a community together. So whether it's a sports league or at school or with their grandparents, that often the center of reward is food related.
Oh, gosh,
every
drove
class
me crazy.
Pizza party and
yes.
When
did it become okay to feed my kids crap? Can I say that?
Yeah.
yeah.
Anytime you want, you take them to church nursery, and I was always that mom, like, please don't give my kids any food. Please don't give my kids any food. But it was, and I homeschooled. So I had far less of that, but you are so right.
With my child being a little bit older now, we're not involved in a lot of stuff like that anymore. But even whenever he was in elementary school, the teachers knew that I was a dietitian.
Yes.
So they would pass out Skittles as a reward, but they wouldn't give my son any. And I'm like torn. Do I want him to get what everyone else is getting, even though I really don't? But why does that have to be the reward? Why can't we give a sticker?
Yes.
Everyone
or
can have
a high five.
Yes.
Why does it have to be food related?
And at school, where that Skittle is going to take some of those, one little Skittle will take one kid's attention, and just they're done for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and that poor teacher can't handle the kids. I've been at my kids' school.
Then they're on
after
medication.
snacks, and the kids are wild after sugar or dye, and I'm sure the teachers, I cannot wait for these kids to go home.
Yeah. So I think as a community, if we have to, like, we're individually doing our own things, but if we had to level up as a community, it would be to either not let food be the only reward, or change the food that we're giving as a reward. I'm much more a pusher of eating doesn't have to be a part of every single situation that we're in.
Absolutely.
And so we can shift that a little bit, and that's where I think that I would like for things to push and to shift a little bit, is to recognize that food is rewarding to some extent, but we don't have to have and use food as a reward for everything across the board. And we're talking kids today, but there's really adults too.
Yeah.
Everything does not have to be reward driven with food.
You never see it something healthy either that's going to benefit
A
that
salad
child in the rest of the day.
Right.
I used to actually, so my kids did go to Mother's Day out 2 days a week when they were little, before, we full-fledged homeschooled. But I would take pencils for the whole class. I would take stickers, and on top of that, I would bring a certain food that whenever the other kids were getting something, my kids would get such and such. But even still, it still sets them apart as different when they're getting that. Well, why can't they have this, or why can't they have that? Even just the difference between, like, when my kids would have their this was back when nobody was carrying stainless steel bottles around the ballpark, right? Everybody's doing it now, but they would have their stainless steel bottles, and the other kids would have their plastic water bottles. And I can remember my kids just wanted to drink out of plastic so bad. There comes a point where they just really don't want to look so different. But it would be great if, like you said, as a community, we're always presenting them with these healthier, not always food choices for reward, because then that becomes, food is a reward. Food is a reward. Food is a reward. We have too much obesity to constantly think.
Yeah, that's the exact issue that we're trying to undo.
Exactly.
Whenever they're coming in with whatever XYZ medical condition they have.
Yes.
Yeah. Every time there's a contest at school or whatever, it's a pizza party or so-and-so's birthday, and whenever it's coming up, my daughter's always like, well, I can't do that. It's always like, preemptive disappointment, because she already knows, well, I can't do that. And she feels left out before it's even happened.
Yes.
And it's not even just because I don't want her to, it's because she cannot have it. We definitely need to rethink those.
And honestly, for her, it's kind of good that she does have that physical manifestation, because I look at all the kids, and there were not that many, but the kids who were raised more like my kids were. And I had that I actually ran a homeschool for 6 years, and mamas who were on that healthy track who were homeschooling were drawn to my campus because they knew that I did not have Skittles being handed out on my campus. They would get a pencil or a, little box of crayons or something rather than a food item. And if they did, it was an organic apple or something, right? So, but when I look at those kids that grew up, the choices that they're making now, one particular boy who was good friends with my oldest son, he sticks out to me. He was the kid who had the physical manifestations, and it was a lot of stomach stuff. Now, he threw caution to the wind and went a little crazy for a while, but he paid for it. A lot of the kids, they're not paying for it yet, and so they don't think there's a consequence. But this one boy, latter high school, dove really in. Like he would take broth to the track field, right, for track practice, and be drinking his broth. And at the end of the first year that he was on this team, this sports team, the coach at the end of the year banquet said, I want to know what he's eating, because he watched his endurance, his performance, just his ability to sustain these long runs. He said, I want to know what that kid's eating. So it mattered. And in college, he's in college now, his mom, ships him these, because he has to, like the cafeteria works with him, and he is sustaining that lifestyle and his health. And it was a blessing that he had those physical manifestations, because it's kept him on the straight and narrow with his health. And so it is a good,
she's lucky.
It really, like a blessing and a curse again, right?
And she doesn't even want to test it. She's like, I'm not going there, because if she gets exposed, it's horrible.
Yes.
Dr. Jacob Rowe and I had a conversation a couple months ago, kind of similar to that, like with the sports. But we're pushing our kids to be academics, athletes. And I see these people bringing powdered donuts and Gatorade to the football field and wondering why their kid is sluggish. Like, if you give your kids the fuel that their body needs, they're going to kick everyone's butt.
Yes.
Like if that's the competitive nature that we're trying to push on our kids, why not give them the best food for that too?
Yes. It's just elementary. It really is. It's like, I always say this, and it's so true. Would you put a little, people are like, oh, well, moderation. I don't believe in moderation. There's some things you should never put in your body, right? You have your automobile. Would you ever put a little salt in your automobile? Then why would you put seed oils and, genetically modified foods into your body, right? A car can be replaced easily. Your health can. I mean, you can when you work at it, but it's, it's not something to just be casual with, in my opinion.
Right.
It's everything: longevity, happiness, health, indulging in these things that we've been taught to think, like the Skittles or the donuts, or these things that they make the kids happy. That's not happiness. It's pleasure, and pleasure is fleeting. It's over. It's a second on the taste buds, and then it's gone. And then you have all the consequences that come later. Happiness is feeling good, being healthy, not having allergies, not having stomach aches, right? Pleasure leads to addiction often, right? Sugar addicts, addicted to fast food, all the things. Happiness is just being able to make wise, healthy choices, right? I use that happiness, pleasure concept all the time.
I like that analogy, because I don't think many people think about it that way. They're just, it makes me happy because it feels good.
Yes.
And then it is temporary, because often after you binge on chocolate cake, you're depressed the next day.
Absolutely. Your blood sugar's crashing. It's an acceptable drug, but make no mistake, as I'm sure you both know, it is a powerful sugar. It's a powerful drug that in, pretty much every study, those rats are going to that sugar every single time, because it's so powerful what it does to the brain. It's the same response as an alcoholic when they're getting their hit. If they're not drinking anymore, they're eating sugar all day long, because you're getting that same response. What it's doing to your liver, what it's doing to your blood sugar. These are just not good things to have in the daily diet. It's one thing to have it on a treat,
right?
Some real cane sugar. But it's another to not even know that it's in your diet, and you've got 125 grams that you didn't even know was sugar in your body by the end of the day. Yeah. Or more. 125 is probably conservative for some people. every day.
It's wild how much. I think, what is the recommended, like 8?
25 grams.
Oh, 25. See, I'm like
and
way
that
less.
to me is insanity. Like 8,
It's
once
still a
you
lot.
hit 8, your immune system starts to break down. And so like that's what I always teach. Like you can have an apple, you can have a banana. That we're not talking about that,
Right.
but those
Added
added
sugar.
sugars.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if someone's listening and they have not historically been giving their kids healthy food, but they're interested in changing their lifestyle, what advice would you give to somebody who is just starting out and maybe has grade school kids?
I remember reading a book. It wasn't at the beginning of my journey. I was already like full on in it and made so many changes. But I read this book. It was one of the first moms who had a child all of a sudden with an egg allergy, severe. And she wrote a book on her journey and trying to help other moms, like, how do you make these changes in your house, right? If I'd have followed her advice, I would have gone way backwards, right? Because I was already way beyond that. But I remember thinking, this is good. And I use it in my practice. Because if you're going, rather than thinking that it's realistic to, we're going to wipe everything out of the house, you're going to be eating organic fruits and vegetables, carrot sticks, and, everything healthy. If you're giving your kid goldfish crackers, right? Well, now you can have access to go to the store and buy goldfish crackers. They don't really goldfish brand.
Right.
They probably don't have, they might be a nut and seed blend rather than genetically modified wheat, let's say. That's, to me, and I don't know how you feel about it, but starting with school age kids who already have their little taste buds and they like the way it looks sometimes, finding a better option for that particular thing rather than just ripping it from
healthy
them.
swaps.
Yeah. Healthy swaps is what I personally would say. And you can swap out conventionally raised Walmart beef if that's what you're using, or any other store that's conventionally raised. It's about the same thing. And swap to grass-fed beef, or from regular chicken, conventional chicken, to organic pasture-raised chicken. And same with eggs. They don't know any different than that. If you're having milk, switch to a healthier version of milk, but don't radicalize it like the whole house looks different in a day. Moms who are starting like I did, you have the open door to do that. But moms who are not starting with babies, it'll blow your kids' minds too much, I think, is what I see.
Yeah.
They'll rebel. They'll
shock the
revolt.
system.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, just level up.
Yeah.
Level up.
Yeah.
And there's so many healthy swaps now at
yes.
Whole Foods. The whole snack and candy aisle, they have the Pop-Ums that look like the little goldfish, and they have the knockoff Skittles and the knockoff
Yes.
M&Ms, and they're
Yes.
all much less sugar, dye-free.
Dye-free, right. I do say this, and I always try to drive this point home. Organic processed food is still processed food.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Don't be fooled that just because you're opening up a bag that says organic on it, that this is healthy. Sometimes it's not a matter of, like when you're first starting, is it healthy? It's more of a matter, is it less harmful sometimes is what you're getting. But
Right.
the more you can pull out
Right.
without, just causing chaos in the house, the better it will be overall. But it is, it's still processed food, but there are so many options now to be able to make those healthy swaps that the kids will not even notice.
Yeah.
Right.
And if they do notice the bag looks different, taste it, it's probably going to taste better because it's real food. It's closer to real food.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
finding the balance between the healthier versions of processed foods,
Yes.
especially when we're talking about kids, and
Yes.
the introduction of real food.
Yes.
That balance
Yes.
really needs to be fine-tuned a little bit.
Yes.
And then you can start to shift to less processed
Yes.
foods and to more real food.
Yes.
But I think at first it's just finding a balance, and then again, kind of always just leveling up. And the thing about leveling up is that the levels never really stop.
Right.
You don't get to a point where you're like,
Right.
okay, we're good, we're done.
done.
Right.
I've
Right.
won the game.
Right.
It never really works that way,
Right.
unfortunately. But there's always something you can do to just level up a little bit. And that's
Yes.
really, I think, the name of the game. Not to try and
Yes.
go from this level to this level, but to gradually increase as you feel
Yes.
comfortable.
One good example of that is, and this is a path that I try to put all my clients on, but say you're eating a lot of chips and dips and things like that. Well, if you can switch to, say, a Simple Mills cracker and then dip that in an organic hummus, right? One preferably with olive oil and not canola oil or another seed oil. And then from that point, well, the next thing you know, you're having carrot sticks and cucumber sticks and red pepper sticks with that organic hummus, right? With the right oil, a non-seed oil. That's that progression of leveling up that she's talking about.
I'm visualizing like weaning
Yes.
just like slowly taking away a little, adding a little, and just so it's not so drastic, but just
it's like a little chess match.
Yes. And you crave what you eat. You really do. If you eat more healthy food, you're going to crave more healthy food. If you eat unhealthy food, you're going to crave unhealthy food. So where it's maybe eating a salad for lunch with maybe walnuts and boiled eggs, good protein in it, seem like before, because you want that sandwich because you're craving that bread. Start eating that salad for a couple of days, and you're going to start craving that salad. So you crave what you eat.
I'm hungry. I'm craving a salad. Before we let you go, this has been an awesome conversation. What does living vividly mean to you?
Living vividly? I actually was prepared for this question because I had a feeling with vivid. So I wrote it down, if that's okay.
Of course.
So to me, living vividly means to live a life with an intense, clear, and impactful purpose. To live a life that's full, that leaves a lasting impact and impression on those who are watching as I live it out. And for my particular journey and new profession, it means living a loving, joyous, healthy lifestyle that results in an abundance of good energy for doing good things and a resulting longevity to enjoy life and live out my passion for a very, very long time.
Thanks for listening to Living Vividly. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. For more resources and details from today's discussion, check out the show notes. Until next time, keep living vividly.